Hi, this is Insider Talk from Start Frugal, where you can get all the help that your startups need. In the last two videos, we talked a little bit about, first, how you decide whether you should be raising or not. And we also go through how VCs value your startup. And that should hopefully give you an idea in terms of whether you're going to go for your fundraising round. If you decided that the answer is yes, today we're going to go through how to create your investor target list. And let's go. First, there are some different types of VC firms that you can go and target. Instead of reaching out to all the VC firms in the world, which are thousands or even more than that, that will going to take a lot of time. You should be instead thinking about how to precisely curate a list that is most relevant for your startup. That will save you a lot of time and incredibly increase your success rate. There are different types of VC firms that you can target. The VC firms usually will have a little bit of their differentiation and focus area. I've roughly divided into 3 areas that you should definitely be considering when you're doing the list. So the first area is the stage that they invest in. Some VC firms focus a little bit more on the early stage. You can also find individual angels that invest incredibly early. Some of the smaller check size can be under 10K. And of course, some people might go crowd raising. Some people might go for crowdfunding. The platforms such as Kickstarter is really interesting, but that is for incredibly small investment amount, and we will not discuss this in the video. Some firms invest really early, from pre-seed to seed stage, and some firms focus only on the later stage rounds. And if you are raising funding for your first few rounds, they are probably not relevant for you. In that case, the question you should be asking investors, or sometimes you can find from their website, is their check size. You can also search in TechCrunch and relevant news website to see what kind of stage they have invested in, whether it's seed, pre-seed, or they have been mainly leading the Series A and Series B rounds. The next consideration is location. Some investors only invest in very specific areas. It can be defined by country, which is Australia, US, or UK. It can also be described by region. Some people invest in APAC or North America in general. And some investors are pretty open to everything. You can see that they open up office in different regions, and they only focus on the good investment opportunity and care not as much about region, so they invest globally. In that case, it's pretty interesting in this era because location start to matter less compared to before. And last, you want to check out their area of focus. Some investment firms decide their area of focus in terms of the industry verticals that invest in. Some of them will prefer fintech, climate tech, artificial intelligence. SaaS is definitely a really popular option between investors. The others might be investing in deep tech or consumer technology. By clarifying that early on, you can avoid a really big group of investors who might not show any interest in your startup. That also shows that you have done the research about the investors before you meeting them, and that gives you a good chance to leave a good impression on the first day. One of the common things that people have been doing is to research which investors have invested in competing companies, so their competitors. The interesting news is that there is a dividing view in the VC community, but in general, for smaller firms, a lot of times, especially for firms who tend to follow on in the future rounds, they tend not to invest in competing companies. So you should definitely be looking at their portfolio companies to see whether they have invested in your direct competitor. In that case, it might create conflict of interest and make the investor avoid investing in your startup, even if they think that this is a great, you are creating something amazing. However, some VC firms, especially the ones that invest incredibly early on, will invest in competing technologies, and that is not a concern at all. Another good example of VC firms that invest in competing technologies is Sequoia, because their strategy is that they believe in investing verticals instead of picking a winner. In that case, you can also go for this type of investors, even if they have invested in your competitors. Another common question that people will ask is, who do you reach out in a VC firm? Who do you pitch in a VC firms? Different VC firms have different decision-making process, but in general, partners will have more decisioning power and more influence over the whole process than a relatively junior members of the team. You could be talking to an analyst, an associate or senior associate, investment manager, investment director, principal, or a partner. A lot of times the titles mean is kind of correlated to the decisioning power that they have, but in other cases, titles really don't matter as much. For example, in A16Z, everyone is a partner. In that case, they think that any member of the team will represent the firm pretty well. So the advantage of pitching to a partner is that they generally have more influence and more power in the firm, so they can be leading your deal. However, partners in VC firms a lot of times are really busy and don't have as much time. So if you are pretty new to the ecosystem and have not built up the reputation, it might not be as easy to get a meeting with them. Instead, you can go through the more junior members of the team. It will generally be easier to set up a meeting with them to pitch your startup and get some feedback. They can be quite honest with you in terms of what they think could be improved before bring you on to the whole team meeting or to another meeting with a partner. They can also be a pretty good sponsor for you throughout the whole process, because associates also want to build out their reputation within the firm. So if they can source a pretty good deal and make an investment, that will be a good track record with them. So there is a natural tendency for them to be more supportive of you during the whole process if they are convinced that your idea is great. Many of us know that by getting a warm intro to a VC investor, that will increase your chance of getting the first meeting. Those kind of warm intro can come from the ecosystem, which is the peer founders, especially the founders of the portfolio companies of the same VC firm. It can also come from other investors. So you could be pitching to an investor that is not as interested in your startup, but they think they could be interested in your idea. It's just not their focus area. In that case, they could be referring you to another peer investor that they have been working with and is more relevant to you. So in that case, it's pretty useful to build good relationship with investor, even if they are not directly relevant to you. Other source of introduction can come from law firms, accounting firms that have been having close relationship with the VC firms. If you don't have that kind of connection, it's okay too. You can go to the events that VC investors will generally show up. For example, if they have really specific focus area such as climate tech, you can find them in climate tech conference where they will be scouting out in new technologies, that would be a great opportunity to pitch and meet the investors. Another pretty good event can be the pitching events or demo nights. A lot of investors will attend or go to panels. After the panel, you can definitely reach out to them and have a chat. Give them your contact number and briefly talk about the startup. So remember to prepare your elevator pitch really well, because in that case, if you get their attention within 1 or 2 minutes, that will give you a gateway to get the first meeting with the investor. And finally, you can join a community where you can meet peer founders and peer investors. And this is actually one of the reasons why I created Start Frugal. I think that if you are funding your company for the first time, or if you have not been in the startup community for a long time, sometimes it can be overwhelming to have so much information on you, and without the necessary good connections, it's a little bit hard to navigate around. With the community, it makes it a lot easier. With people who have walked in your shoes before, many founders are happy to pay back, and investors a lot of times are happy to be in a community as well, just to meet new founders. So make sure you sign up to join Start Frugal if you think this will be relevant for you. We created this community specifically for first-time founders. And finally, majority of the VC firms do look at deals that's submitted through their own website, although the chance of getting to the first meeting is relatively low compared to other methods, because they could be having hundreds or thousands of deals, and people will screen your pitch deck for a few minutes and decide whether this is an area that is of interest of them. So make sure that you get a warm intro if possible, but if not, it's still okay to submit your pitch through their website, because it does get screened and looked at. Next, we'll go through an example of how to create a template investor target list I've created for you guys. You can put your company name here, the series here, and fill up the whole template. You will start to enter the fund and angel name in there. A really good way to do that is to search the database. If you have access to Crunchbase, or if you have access to PitchBook, they are generally quite useful to list out the angel or the funds that have been investing in a specific area. Then you'll be filling into this column called main contact. That will be either the associates or the partners that you have been in touch with, or you are interested in target. Then under the status, in general, that's like a pipeline. You will be going through the process of getting a warm intro, send the first email and then get the email back, set up the first meeting, and then go into the deep dive negotiation process, and you will be signing a term sheet. After that, the VC firm or the investors will just generally go through the due diligence process. Without too much disruption, usually the deal will get finalized. Then you can fill in their target location. That will be the location that VC firms will be investing in. It could be a country or region, as we mentioned, the interest area that they focus on. For example, that can be deep tech, or that can be fintech, or SaaS companies. You can browse it on their website. Oftentimes, they will list it under Above Us. Then it comes to check size. This is usually something that you can ask on the first meeting, so you don't have to fill in the check size from very early on. But you can also get an indication to see what are the round size that they generally invest in from the news. And then the previous deals are specifically the deals, preferably that the investors who is your main contact have invested in. Even within the same VC firms, people have different interest area. So some people might be more interested in fintech. Some people will. One of the increasing trend is Web3. You can just generally have a gauge in terms of what their taste is like, and then list out potential competitive investments. Some VC firms have competing investments of the companies. Some VC firms could be investing in the competitor of your companies, and some VC firms can have adjacent companies. Some VC firms could have invested in the companies working in the adjacent area. In fact, people who have invested in the adjacent area will show that they have interest in the industry and sometimes looking to build a more general impact around the region. And lastly, any other comments. For example, you can get a warm intro from your contact, or you are still not as sure whether there will be a good fit. You can fill up the whole form. In general, you should at least have 30 to 50 to start with to target, and you can even have a column called priority to fill in the form and list out your favorite investor to target. So that is a very brief introduction in terms of how you can build an investor target list when you are starting your fundraising activities. Well, very best luck with the fundraising process, and hope to see you at Start Frugal. See ya.